afternoon, everyone. Our honored guests, family, friends. Also a warm welcome to the thousands of friends and supporters of ours that are watching online now and all over the world. Thank you all for being here. This is absolutely tremendous. This is an amazing day that we've been waiting so long for. And really today, we hope to reinvent the ideas of what international community and youth development are. I'm deeply, deeply honored that you're here. Absolutely deeply honored. But more important, I'm honored that you're here standing to be counted as we begin this amazing journey that's the UNESCO program. Together, I promise you we're going to do unbelievable things. And I guarantee we're going to work towards social justice for communities and for the betterment of young people. And believe it or not, I can't believe that we're all kind of connected on this journey. And I'm starting to believe that it's all meant to be, and it tends not to be my way. But as President Erickson mentioned before, this quest for social justice, it actually began right here at Penn State, about 60 years ago this month, believe it or not. Just a few steps away, over in Old Main. Some of you may know where it is. Our president then, Milton Eisenhower, had begun a new role. And here's some, I actually dug through the archives and got these amazing pictures from his inauguration. And this was him here. The picture up on the left there is at Beaver Field, which no longer exists. It was the original football field. It's up where Kern Building is now, and Nittany Lion Inn, or those places. But there he is, and his brother Ike there was with him. And at this point, it was 1953, and Ike had just started his first year in his first term as president. And for as long as they had been around together, Milton was Ike's most trusted advisor. And actually in his family, he was called the smart one. And it makes me kind of laugh. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, poor Ike. You win World War II, you get elected president, and your mother still calls your little brother the smart one. Families are weird. It's a strange thing, but nonetheless it happens. But it was really cool. What would happen here is Milt would leave State College on Friday afternoons, and an Army plane would pick him up at Black Mashanden Forest, which is just out west of here, before we had our airport. And he'd spend the weekend shaping foreign policy in the White House. And as Dr. Erickson mentioned, he was the first chairman of the U.S. National Commission, was incredibly linked to it throughout its entire existence. And he saw amazing potential for this new entity to engage the U.S. and the whole post-war community of nations. He did wonderful work. He saw UNESCO as something that was absolutely amazing. This was a book drive that he held to raise money for international development. You can see the stylish clothes that were still being worn. But he saw tremendous potential for this new entity, and also for engaging students and all sorts of other people and engaging scholarship and everything else. He saw UNESCO as something absolutely transformational, something unprecedented in our history. And here's some of his words. I won't read through all of them, but I'll leave them up there and we can think about them. But he saw this as something that was absolutely unique in history. And it brought together all these kinds of amazing people from our societies, just like we're doing with this chair program now, with the sole purpose of promoting peace. And Milton had a dream, much like all of us have had, of a fair, equal, and just world. And it's a dream that's still out there. And together, we're going to achieve it. So today, it's an amazing honor and opportunity for us to rekindle this relationship between UNESCO and Penn State, and continue the work that was started so many years ago by our President Eisenhower. It's really kind of amazing when you think about it, isn't it? It's awesome. Now, as we begin this talk and everything else, I of course have a bunch of people I have to mention and thank. But this isn't out of courtesy. There's such amazing, cool people, absolutely astounding people doing amazing work that I just want you to know about them. And they're key partners of this all along the way. At Salisbury University, I met Charlie Cipolla and Alan Pappas. They were great scholars, amazing mentors, dear friends. And there was also someone else I met there. There was another great mentor of ours, our dearly departed Phil Bosserman, who was a colleague and a classmate of Dr. Martin Luther King. He inspired me in countless ways, more so just by his amazing grace and character and everything else about him. And I spent years studying under him, and I thought I knew everything there was to know about him. And as I was preparing this talk the other day, I came across something else. And here's just some pictures of Phil. I'm not going to put pictures of everybody I thank, I promise. But this was Phil, and he was an amazing, amazing guy. And he was born in Hutchinson, Kansas. And thanks to the president of the Kansas State University, he was selected as a high school delegate to go to the first conference of UNESCO. Well, he was a guy that kind of shaped me, and I never knew this. And he was there from the very beginning in Paris, when UNESCO began, right at the center of it, which is absolutely amazing. And to make it even a little bit more funny, that Kansas State president was a guy named Milton Eisenhower. So it all comes full circle, and it really is kind of messing with my head a lot. But Phil and Charlie and Alan, they stressed to me that there was no nobler quest, no nobler goal in life than social justice, than improving the human condition, none whatsoever. And they really began a process of transforming me. See, back then I had long hair and a leather jacket, and I still have the jacket, and not so much of the hair. But they began this process of turning a hooligan into an activist, into a scholar, which was pretty amazing. At Penn State here, I had the opportunity to work with some amazing people. I met Ken Wilkinson and Al Luloff. Both of them taught me more about community than they'll ever know. We lost Ken in 1993, but I had a few years working with him that were magical. And he still remains a source of inspiration. Al is still here and continues to be an endless source of advice and scholarship, as well as a valued friend and colleague. Similarly, some of the people you've met already today. Ted Alter, who's been a dear friend and a central part of our new UNESCO program. And his amazing energy and absolute fearlessness has allowed us to take the program to heights we never thought we would see. I had big, broad ideas, and he's just blown those out of the water with his fearlessness about it. Another absolutely key component to this UNESCO program is Deanna Bearing, who you met this morning. And there she is, back there, right there. And truth be told, it was years ago, I was the first student that Deanna ever helped fund do international work. And I came into her office one day and convinced her that spending 6 months in Ireland and in Irish pubs could be considered scholarly work. And it was, and we did amazing, amazing things, which was phenomenal. And years later, I had the chance to call her one summer morning from Dublin at 6 in the morning. And I asked her the question, how do you feel about going after one of these UNESCO chairs? And her reply was simple: how do we make it happen? We're going to make it happen. Let's do it right now. So Ted and Deanna, thank you so much. In 2009, I had the opportunity to return to Penn State and pursue work that I see as just absolutely transformational. I walk onto this campus, this place of learning, of action, and I've been in heaven every single day. And Tracy Hoover, you brought me back here, and I know I make your life difficult, and but thank you so much for your support and for everything, your leadership, and for always having my back. Tremendous stuff we're doing together. Dean Barb Chris mentioned before she opened about how we just started planning out this project. Also, our former dean, Bruce McPheron, I came to them with this wild idea of establishing a UNESCO chair here. And truth be told, the idea presented as many headaches for them as it did opportunities. They could have very easily said, push this off till some other time. But it never even occurred to them to think that way. It wasn't even a possibility. They had tremendous faith, and we ran after it immediately, and were fortunate enough to get it. You may have heard about Brad Olson. He's being called on to fix all the computers and everything today. He's back there, and I have to thank Brad in many ways. Brad was a former grad student of mine, maybe a future grad student, because he's kind of a glutton for punishment. Thank you all for your help. You've been amazing the last few months as we've pulled everything together with this program and everything else we've done. I know I drove you crazy, but you've been amazing, so thank you. There's a few more here, I promise. The Penn State community, I mean, I was always amazed and impressed by Penn State, but the amazing role that the administration and other people have taken on has just left me speechless. From Vice Provost Blanny Bowen to Vice Provost Michael Adewumi, I think the two of you have been more excited about this chair than I've been. And it's just your passion and excitement for it is amazing. Our other senior administration, from development to alumni to marketing to everyone else, I'm just speechless and humbled by your dedication and assistance. I know you have us faculty coming to you all the time with these proclaimed great ideas that are never terribly great or opportune, and we drive you nuts, and you've been amazing for me. One other one, in particular, President Erickson. I wanted to thank you for your unwavering support that this day could happen. And God knows you've had your hands full. And first and foremost, let me thank you for your leadership in words and deeds through the challenges of our recent past. And in spite of all you've had to do, believe it or not, I was still getting emails from him long after midnight asking how UNESCO was going, how are things coming together, showing a genuine interest in this and making a priority on his insanely big to-do list. Words can't express my gratitude, but my most sincere thanks for everything there. Okay, I promise, I'm almost done. This is a bit like the Oscars. There'll be the music playing and they'll pull me off with a stick or something. But finally, thank you to my family. I'm fortunate enough here to have my mother and father and stepfather here. Thanks for having me. And how about this, Mom? This is something, huh? Also my in-laws, the Yoakums and the Snedigers and the Stovers, who've made me part of their families, and thank you so much for that. And Jimmy, we love and miss you, and we know you're here with us somewhere today. A few other people. My family of students, graduate and undergraduate, both past and present. You're the reason I'm here. Where are you at? There's a bunch of you around here. There. Oh, yeah, see? You're being quiet for a change. Good, okay, all right, good. You've been the inspiration for all this, and I hope I've served you well, and I love you all. One other key piece here that I have to talk about, my Irish family. And, you know, a lot of Americans go to Ireland and they tell everybody that they're Irish and usually say where their mothers came from. And it's really kind of a funny, interesting thing. But I'm fortunate enough that I really do have an Irish family. You see, I've been adopted, which is wonderful. And I've got 3 great brothers and their families that have looked after me like no one. See, about 10 years ago on a visit to Ireland, really my life was forever changed. I met Pat Dolan, who gave me this kind introduction before. His first words were to me, I still remember them, was, "Come here, I have an idea." And it's been a series of absolutely amazing and crazy adventures since. And in 2007, I met John Canavan, and in 2009, I met Alan Smith. And the 3 of you have allowed me to continuously be in the presence of greatness. And not in some grandiose, pompous way, that'd never, ever be your style, but the amazing and astounding humbleness and grace and character and examples you set. You're amazing leaders, amazing scholars, and champions for the rights of young people to have happy and productive lives. And the same is true for some of the other people you've met today, from Sean Campbell and Alan Cairns, my other brothers. For all of you, most important, you've set new and almost unattainable standards for being a great quality human being. And for that, I'll thank you more than anything. Okay, one more. Last and most important, absolutely most significant and without exception, my wife, Christine. Right there. Yeah. She's the first lady of UNESCO. The love of my life. And from a tiny apartment on Troop Street to this stage today, you're the reason behind all of it. And you've answered way too many phone calls at 3 a.m. from the other side of the planet, and tolerated too many years on the road, and all my shortcomings, and kick me in the butt as needed. And you're amazing. And I love you, and none of this would be possible without you. So thank you. So for all these people, and Christine especially, a quick round of applause for them again. They're just wonderful. So. And as I was putting together this talk, I kept being reminded of that great Apple computer commercial, Think Differently. Do you remember it by any chance? I actually ripped it off here from Steve Jobs. It's only a second or a minute, so.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. By the way, if anyone has any connections with Apple, you might let them know about the product placement.
They can send the check on the back of the brochure as the address, and we can certainly use it. But this UNESCO Chair program is just about what that ad stressed. It's about changing the world. And more importantly, it's about changing the world with a bunch of absolutely mad geniuses. It really sums up the kind of people that are here today and those we work with. And this is what makes this work so incredibly exciting. It makes it so incredibly fun, rewarding, and worthwhile. And I really want you to be a part of it. And I want you to help us pull in people of the same mind as us to be part of it. Tremendous things will come of it. So today, I want to talk about two simple ideas. I want to talk about education and community. Tell a few stories, that's all, no big deal. And I want you to keep in mind that if we do nothing else but develop these two things, your dreams of making the world a dramatically better place will be achieved. It's as simple as that. Now, to begin with here, let's talk about the priority here of achieving education for all. Education is the first thing I want to share with you. And the UNESCO Chair program, it's not about academic exercises. It's not about wishful thinking or theoretical ramblings or charitable intentions. It's certainly not about filling our libraries with books that are rarely, if ever, read. To me, it's about action, and it's about justice. It's about education for all. It's about guaranteeing that single most important human right, the absolute right to education and to knowledge. It's that knowledge that opens up an absolute world of possibilities for a young girl in rural Africa. It's knowledge that convinces a boy in Sierra Leone or Rwanda to pick up the pen instead of a gun. It's knowledge that empowers youth to make life-saving decisions about their health. And it's knowledge that empowers communities to take care of their own needs. It's one of the most important things we can do. And, this comes back to me a bit here. I mean, education for me has really been my salvation. And I didn't even know it, really, till much later in life. You see, my educational path was odd at best. I'm certainly, including myself, most people, certainly myself, wouldn't have predicted being here accepting this great honor today. And truth be told, a lot of people probably wouldn't have predicted me graduating from high school. Certainly not completing college or advanced degrees, a professorship at one of the world's greatest institutions, and now a UNESCO chair would have been seen as absolutely delusional. They would have locked me up if I ever talked about suggesting it. See, my educational training began at schools that were starting to fail, schools that no longer exist, places that had lacked funds and resources and commitments and all kinds of things that led to decreased student outcomes. There were burned out teachers who would have much rather been somewhere else. That further contributed to a whole deterioration of things. And I certainly could have easily fallen through the cracks, and at times I did. And there's plenty of blame to go around here, first of all. Let's start with myself, if nowhere else. I was bored, I was unchallenged, uninterested, I was probably lazy, I did adequate work at best. I was well-read, misbehaved, probably angry. I saw no purpose what I was doing in school. There was no connection between how education impacted the great things we can do. At college, though, I found a different world. And there were fresh ideas. There were calls to action. There was an education with a purpose. And most importantly, there were teachers who were interested and encouraging. And a bunch of them, they were a hell of a lot tougher than I was. And the exciting thing about them, they loved what they were doing. They would work 80 hours a week, not because they had to, but because they loved it so. And they were amazing people with amazing stories, amazing lives. They'd been everywhere and seen everything. And they were just absolutely remarkable and extraordinary in their calling. But still, that wasn't enough. That's how dense I am. It wasn't until I actually saw the impacts of education throughout the world that I realized its importance. It wasn't the chore or the burden it had seemed when I was young. It was the single key, the single most important factor in shaping my lives and the lives of other people. Now, my story is largely average. I don't mean it to be anything other than that. Many of us have wandered a long, strange path to be where we're at now. Many of us began our educations in less than desirable settings. And any of the challenges or anything else I just mentioned don't even deserve to be considered in the same sentence with the issues facing our inner city schools or our failing rural schools or throughout the developing world. But the one thing that was key with this, the reality is that we've forgotten why education is so important. We've distilled its usefulness down to a handful of small outcomes. Things like getting a better job. There's a lot more to it than that. And we've told ourselves and our children that it's something we need, but we stopped understanding why. Now, not so in the developing world, where I get to see even young children who are excited and honored and enthusiastic about the prospect of going to school in a one-room schoolhouse with next to no resources. They understand what we've forgotten. They understand what our grandparents held so dear, that education is the single most important thing we can attain. It's the single greatest gift we can give. And if we have one chance at making better lives for ourselves and everyone else, it's through the doors that education opens. I know I'm preaching to the choir here on a college campus saying we need education, but this is across the board. Now, there's a lot of reasons why, and the facts speak volumes, and there's tons of them, and I'll share some of them. We can talk more about them in the future. But here's a few that I find pretty amazing when you look at it. In all the low-income countries in the world, if they were to receive basic education, basic reading skills, 170 million people could be lifted out of poverty. And that equates to a 12% reduction in global poverty, just by providing basic reading skills. We're not talking anything more than that. Now, some other things. How about health? Higher education equals higher lives. Now, over the last half century, life expectancy has gone up for most people across the world. There's been one exception. People without a high school degree have actually seen a decrease in their life expectancy, despite all of our technology and everything else that's out there. It's just absolutely amazing. But how about really moving the human race forward? See, I've been surrounded by amazing women my whole life. Some of them are here. There's a bunch of them that are here. Insanely smart, tough, well-read, critical thinkers, fighters, and I've seen the challenges they face because of their gender, and I've seen the fights they fought, and I've seen the obliteration of the poor people that challenge them. These are some tough, I'll introduce you later, but stay clear. Because of this idea of gender equity is close to home for me. But it's also a very, very important priority throughout the world. Education is the single biggest key to ensuring women's rights, equality, and community building. And how important? Well, let me give you some examples. Countries lose about $1 billion a year, $1 billion, by failing to educate girls to the same level as boys. Some other things here. One additional year of schooling, these are what we know from the education statistics, reduces the probability of becoming a young mother by 10%. An amazing one, look at this one. A child's mother who can read is 50% more likely to make it to age 5. These are absolutely astronomical numbers. In sub-Saharan Africa alone, about 2 million children could be saved every year if their mothers had at least a secondary education. Now, I know that's a nice number to throw out when we think about it, but in this day and age where we need so much, how many Steve Jobs or Einsteins or Gandhis or Da Vinci's or other people have failed to live and had a chance to change the world to be a better place? Nonetheless, about 2/3 of the world's 800 million illiterate adults are women, and they're the foundations of civil society, and we need to invest in them as such. Now, this has all got to cost a lot, right? I can see the ag economists back there jotting down the numbers, trying to figure out what it's going to cost us. How much do you think? 100 trillion, a trillion, 100 billion? Not at all. For $16 billion a year in aid, we can send every child in school in every low-income country. $16 billion. It's a lot, absolutely, sure. It's about half the amount that Europeans and Americans spend on ice cream every year. And the creamery won't be happy to hear that, but that's what it is. For 2 less fighter jets in the U.S. arsenal, this could be achieved. For $1 a month for each citizen of the G7 nations, this could be taken care of. It's the right thing to do. It's not about charity, it's about justice. And it's much more effective, much cheaper, and leads to better development outcomes than you can imagine. We've got lots of proof behind that. So let me share one more example with you. Paul Maynard was great to introduce me and to share the story of Chris Aredo from Kenya. Chris had a very normal childhood up until age 12 when he was orphaned. And then he found himself living on the rough streets of Nairobi, scavenging, stealing to survive, doing whatever it took. And he lived that way for 6 years. 6 years. Now, I don't think many of us, I guarantee myself, aren't that tough or that resilient. It's pretty amazing to be that tough or that strong. And after 6 years, he was enrolled in the National Youth Service, which Paul mentioned earlier, which is a boot camp, really, to provide basic vocational skills. And shortly thereafter, he met Paul. And together, at that time, Paul was working on the Child and Youth Empowerment Center and shaping the idea of what they would do. And they hit it off. So Chris joined with him, and in 2006, the center was launched. And Chris had the opportunity to be, help shape the lives of young people in a much better and productive way. He also had the opportunity, as part of an educational exchange program, to go to Germany. And the importance of education just really hit home to him there. And when he came back, he immediately enrolled in high school, which he completed really quickly. And then with the center and its support networks, he enrolled in university. This coming December, he's going to graduate with a college degree in Advanced Business Information Technology. He's been the chairperson of the university's chapter of the Red Cross. He's also president of the International Association of Students in Economic and Commercial Sciences. And he's also been involved with the work we've been doing with UNESCO, serving as a youth leader, mentor, facilitator, and community leader. Now, I mention this story not as some feel-good moment, though it certainly is. I mention it because it provides really a highlight into the common human condition. It provides the opportunity of learning. It provides all these different things. And if we provide those opportunities, people will seize that moment. We've come to be cynical and think people won't. Providing that access, people will take it. And through a small, tiny investment, that's all it was, and his hard work, more importantly, Chris's life and the lives of others were transformed. I mean, think about it. In less than 10 years, from being a homeless street child to a high school graduate, a college graduate, to a leader, an activist, and an agent of change. It's absolutely remarkable, the impacts we can have. Now, think how tough and determined and resilient he is. One of the key things I want to stress is that he's not terribly unusual. There's a lot of people like that out there. He's the kind of person I want on my team. And Paul, I've told you, if you can get me him and 20 other people like him, we're going to change history. That's the kind of people you need. It's just absolutely astounding. So, I also want you to remember that there's more than 1 billion youth like Chris out there. And just think of the impacts if we reach a fraction, just a fraction of them. And think of the impacts if we empower all of them, how different a world this can be. So education, it sets the stage for strong communities that can take care of their own needs. And this education for all agenda is going to be the cornerstone of our work. And that's the first thing I wanted to share with you. I want to talk a bit now about community. And come up here. Second thing I said is I want to stress the importance of community. Just like education, community is a tremendous thing. It shapes productive and stable lives, just in different ways. And when we combine the two, it's absolutely magical in its outcomes. And a lot of people often ask me, why even bother thinking about community? Well, there's a few reasons here. First of all, community contributes to individual, family, and social well-being. Most of us are where we are at now because we had good communities that guided us in the right direction. It's our first contact with the world beyond our family. Remember when your parents kicked you out of the house for the first time when you were like 3 or 4, right? Sent you off to school and that sort of thing, all by yourself? Well, at that point, you entered into the community, and you started shaping it. And it started shaping you back, which is a tremendous thing. And it's been this wonderful synergistic relationship since then. It's also this great setting where socialization takes place. It's where we learned how to behave, be normal people, functioning members of society. It's where all of our institutions, from our schools to our churches to our religious organizations to everything, exists. And it's really where we develop a lot of our culture and rules. It shapes much of who we are. And the other thing it does that's absolutely essential is that it maintains channels of communication and interaction. And these things fall into place in lots of different ways that make a more productive and functioning society. I often tell my students, think about community as one big relationship. So, how many of you here have been in relationships before? A couple hands, good, okay. For those of you who haven't, there's still hope. I can recommend a few websites maybe or something. But I want you to think about those relationships. Remember when you first started the relationship? You called each other 20 times a day. You texted each other nonstop. You were inseparable. You had to go everywhere together. You interacted constantly. Kind of what happens. What happens over time, though? You don't call every day. Certainly not 10 or 20 times a day. You don't go everywhere together. And all of a sudden, as you stop talking more and everything else, we start developing, mountains out of molehills. All kinds of little issues become massive, complicated, messy things. It's the exact same process with community. It involves more people, it's messier, but it's the exact same thing. So I want you to think about community sort of in that way. And it's also the case that often during presidential elections, I'll ask my students to count the number of times the community is said during presidential debates or speeches. And when you think about those debates and speeches, every word is chosen with precision. And you can actually put a dollar amount to every word that's chosen in terms of advertising time and all this kind of stuff. It's not at all uncommon to hear community mentioned dozens of times in an hour-long speech. And you kind of think about why is this the case, but it brings up some amazing ideas, community. Tremendously powerful. It brings up those warm and fuzzy ideas, you know, whether they're real or imagined, of what life was like and what it could be like. Now, before you think me an academic hippie, or that I'm advocating free love or touchy-feely ideas here, the impacts of community, and by the way, no offense to the hippies or former hippies or hippie wannabes that are out here or whoever, the impacts and outcomes and potentials of community, they're real, they're tangible, and they're measurable. We've done tons of research. We can show that these are very, very effective in dealing with almost all of our social problems and issues. Now, some examples of what strong communities do. Strong communities, they're more resilient, they're more adaptive, they're less likely to be exploited from people internally and from outside the place. They connect residents and institutions and organizations to each other to build all kinds of capacity. They promote stability, they tend to have less crime, and local people tend to have better well-being. Very, very important stuff. They also encourage people to be involved in local decision-making and participatory democracy. There's structures in place that get everyone involved, and they have a say on things. At the personal level, it's equally important. Community, it enhances our social and psychological and emotional development. It promotes civic responsibility, which Pat has mentioned before, which is really just a commitment to helping other people. It builds cultural understanding, tolerance, and empathy, and it provides a whole bunch of life skills. Everything from critical thinking to interpersonal skills to leadership to conflict. There's a whole bunch of reasons why community is really, really important. And this list I just gave you is by no means exhaustive. It's a tiny, tiny list. But it's an impressive list, no doubt. And we have mountains and mountains of research data on this. We've got program evaluations, we've got thousands of books, we've got journal articles, all these things that prove that this is the case. And even better, with the help of Pat and Alan and some other folks in the room here, we've studied this process all over the world. And it works everywhere, which is an amazing thing. The conditions might be a little different, we may have to adjust things slightly, but one thing holds true, and that's that absolutely tremendous things happen when people care about each other and the place they live in. Absolutely tremendous things. Now, this isn't an idea, it's not a plan, it's fact. And I can't say it enough. Our strong communities, they equal stable, civil, and just societies. So this idea of building community is absolutely essential, and it's something that has to be a cornerstone of our work. So this need for community for me, it's always sort of rang close to home. See, I was born and raised in a small town in northeastern Pennsylvania. I came from people who left Ireland and Europe and other places seeking survival. These were absolutely great places. They were places that were blessed by amazing natural resources, diverse cultures, some food that you can't even imagine it was so good. Cultures that had unique experience, whole bodies of knowledge for dealing with all of our daily problems, and ways that have been developed over centuries that were effective and massive in dealing with all of our social problems and issues. They were rich in social supports, everything from the neighborhood level to the family, to the religious groups, to schools, to everything else. There was an enormous amount of support there. And to me, they were tremendous places that really had a bit of magic in them, you know? You know, the musician Lou Reed sang that there's a bit of magic in everything, and then there's some loss to even things out. And the loss in these areas was characterized by a lot of things. It was characterized by exploitation from outside interests, from corporations and governments that harvested all the local resources, including people, for far, far less than they were worth. There were places where youth were eventually forced to leave for lack of opportunities and denied their rightful heritage to be part of the place that they held so dear. Like youth, so many youth worldwide, really to become nomads in the diaspora. For many, which was really scary, education became not an opportunity, but really a painful reminder of what might have been. Because after all, why bother wondering and learning about the wonders of Paris and Rome and Tokyo when the odds of you getting there were as good as getting to the moon. For a lot of people, the mill, the mine, and often the unemployment line were our destiny. And even more worse, these were environments where over time citizens were slowly convinced that they were irrelevant, that they had no need to act, that they had no need to be involved locally, and they were convinced that they could never, ever, ever make a difference. Now, the truth of this whole impotence here, it wasn't the result of the Illuminati or the Freemasons or the wealthy or whatever version of the man we created. It was not the standard issue boot of the police or the Pinkerton agency or whoever kicking in our door, forcing us to be compliant. It was something much simpler but infinitely more ominous at the same time, and something much harder and painful to admit. And truth be told, it was a systematic breakdown of our communities. And we've seen this in lots of places. But nonetheless, we were the lucky ones, believe it or not. From Africa to Southeast Asia, to parts of Central and South America, Eastern Europe, all over the place. These kind of conditions would eagerly be welcomed in the face of war and genocide and disease and poverty. Now, but I've got news. Good news, finally, right, after all that depressing talk. Maybe it's not so bad. And if it is so bad, it certainly doesn't need to be. We actually have lots of proof that our communities can be brought back to life. We have tremendous evidence from the field. And this is all the way from do-gooding idealistic activists to battle-hardened program agents to government officials, from shrewd business people to charities and nonprofits. Community capacity is being built, and citizens of all ages are being empowered, but particularly those amazing agents of change, young people. So this is what's making this really exciting. Now, to understand this a bit, let me just give you a 2-second crash course on how I see community. And I deal with I kind of view it as an interactive process, which gives it an easy way for me to think about it. Really, at the core of community is the interaction and interdependence among local people, the ties and the connections we have locally. And all of our communities are made up of special interest groups. And think about them. You know all the different ones that exist in your local places. And these are really just arenas where people can interact and where they can look after their own interests. Community evolves as members of these groups interact over their common general needs. I'll give you an example here of how we might view this. I mean, this is just a silly example, but maybe it looks like State College. We've got all the different parts of our place, and all of those groups have to take care of their own interests. But the key thing is that the more they interact, the more they realize they have common general needs. And it's that area in the middle where they overlap. Just because I'm an environmentalist doesn't mean I can't deal with the business group to agree that we need better schools and roads. It doesn't mean that I give up or sell out to who I am. It just means we can build capacity on working with our common general needs. And as we start interacting and dealing with each other, this idea of community agency emerges. And what this does, it really highlights the fact that empowerment has power. Engagement has power, I'm sorry. Local people working together can transform and change the world. And we, once again, have lots of evidence that this is happening. This isn't some kind of touchy-feely academic idea. We've got lots of resources to show that this is the case. And the more people do this, community emerges. But the one thing I really want to stress is the idea that this is a process. Community is not a given. 100 years from now, you'll be able to pull out a map and State College will be on there. You'll see the geographic boundaries and it'll always be there. But the strong connection among people that makes this place so special might not be. As long as we keep working at it, it will be. But it's a process. Community is not a given thing here. And the other part of this, stressing further with this, is the idea that community is a variable. It's always changing, especially in a place like State College. We've got tons of people coming, tons of people leaving. It's always changing. We need to constantly be maintaining this process and getting people connected, welcoming new people into it. Because the second we stop interacting and communicating and being inclusive, community disappears. And it tends to disappear really quickly. And as we lose those pieces, all kinds of terrible things happen. But if we develop community and maintain it, absolutely tremendous outcomes come from it. And let me give you a few examples here to put it in context, especially why this is so important for younger people. Now here's some of the facts. Civically engaged youth, about 22% more likely to graduate from college. That's pretty impressive. Youth who get engaged civically, about 4 times less likely to be involved in risky behavior, like drugs and everything else. One of the things that I think is absolutely amazing is that young people that get involved in their communities, they're 8 times more likely to believe that they can change the system. Now, this is an important thing, because the fact of the matter is, there's very few obstacles to us changing the world. There's very few obstacles for us to be involved and do great things. We actually choose not to. We've convinced ourselves that we can't make a difference. We've convinced ourselves that we shouldn't act, largely because we've been uninvolved for so long. We've actually forgotten how to do it. Young people, as they get involved, they see the tremendous things that happen. Now, there's one more thing I'd like to mention here. As education and community come together, they intersect in a really big way where tremendous things happen. This is a very important point. Where community involvement and education come together, and both of them are low, extremism thrives. The odds of extremism, of gangs, terroristic organizations, more than quadruple. Now, I'd known about these numbers and I'd seen these kind of things. It was really brought home to me over the last few years as I've done some work in Cambodia. Every time I go there, I make a pilgrimage to the killing fields in Phnom Penh and to the National Genocide Museum. And the walls are covered inch to inch with tens of thousands of photos of the victims. Everyone who came in to be processed had their picture taken. And it kind of brings a lot of this home to me. Like I said, thousands and thousands of them. Now, of all of these, there's one of them that absolutely haunts me. And I bring her flowers every year. And I don't know her name. We've looked it up. No one knows who her name is. But I can't forget her eyes. And I can't forget that had there been a little more education, a little more community capacity, that extremism that ran wild there could have been stamped out, could have been stopped in its track. She and several million other Cambodians would be with us today. And the exact same thing is true in Germany, in Rwanda, Bosnia, and Argentina. Alan Smith and I have had great talks about how this process works. So I believe we owe it to her and to countless other peoples to build strong, educated communities that'll ensure that extremism and lots of other things don't take root and run rampant. The key thing I want to finish with this part is to remember this. Community builds capacity. It provides structure and social supports. It builds empathy and understanding. And it provides the basis for action and activism. It also protects against things like extreme poverty, extremism, and all the chaos that comes with it. The importance and absolute central role of community is going to be one of the other cornerstones of our UNESCO program. And that was the second thing I wanted to share with you today. Now, after all that, you're probably wondering what we're going to do, which is a good thing to ask. Now, I've been looking forward to this day for 2 years. And every now and then, an opportunity comes up that just changes everything. And we've been working really, really hard to put together plans and ideas and programs that are all ready to launch. And I want to share 3 of them with you today. We've got a lot more than that, but there's 3 that we're really excited about. They're absolutely amazing. They're absolutely beautiful creations, and you're going to love them. We think they're just fantastic. The first one here, and this was touched on a little bit this morning in passing, and we mentioned a little bit yesterday, but we're going to form what they call a uni-twin network. And this is a network based on youth and community development. Now, with this thing here, we absolutely reinvent the idea of global partnerships and of collaborations. Uni-twin networks, they're amazing. They're the UN's version of university partnership building networks. They link together in twin universities and NGOs and other people together. And as has been mentioned here today, UNESCO chairs are really rare. We talked about, the Penn State one is only one of 18 in the US. Well, in the US, there's 2 uni-twin partnerships. And we just got the go-ahead to start developing number 3. And while all of them are doing great things, ours is going to be absolutely unprecedented in size and scope and everything else. It's just going to be absolutely amazing in terms of its impact. Now, here's some of the things we're going to have covered. We've got bringing together people and organizations and universities and NGOs from 6 continents. And by the way, I've got to call in. There's actually one school in Antarctica, and I'm going to try and get them on board. So we can have the full 7, and nobody can touch us. It's going to cover 9 geographic regions throughout the world. So far, we've got 35 partner institutions, and that number is growing every day. And the other thing is it's led by 3 UNESCO chairs, which is another thing that's completely unheard of. It's going to allow us to do all kinds of immediate action, research, program development, all sorts of stuff in a very, very quick and responsive time period. As I said, it's going to be led by the 3 UNESCO chairs, Alan Smith, Pat Dolan, and myself. and the 3 multidisciplinary hubs that bring all kinds of resources to the table. In Ireland, we have the Child and Family Research Center at Galway. At the University of Ulster, we have the UNESCO Center for Research on Children and Youth. And at Penn State here, we're putting together the pieces, and the name may change, so don't hold me to it, but the UNESCO Institute for Global Humanitarian Development. Now, each of these 3 institutes, entities, whatever we want to call them, each of them has about 100 faculty already lined up to be part of it, from across the board, all over the place, doing all kinds of stuff. So we're going to bring together hundreds of faculty, the best researchers, program developers, extension agents, everything else to be part of this. Now, this network here, it's going to have a common framework. The things that the 3 of us know how to do are community development and youth development. But that's not where it ends. That's just going to be the umbrella under which everything takes place. Within that, we're going to have specialized programs with all of our partners to deal with health, to deal with education, economic development, small business development, entrepreneurship, all the physical sciences, agricultural development, civic engineering, the list goes on. And as projects and needs come up, we have the ability to do it there. The really cool thing with this kind of structure, it's absolutely unprecedented in what it's going to allow us to do. It's going to make us, or give us the ability to do international comparative research, develop programs, and deliver them, and evaluate them in a matter of months. That process usually takes years. We're going to be able to do tremendous things quick. It's just absolutely amazing. Just think about the potential of this. And with not much work, we're going to reach 10,000 kids in 1,000 communities in the next couple of years. And with your help here, and a little more hard work, we've got no doubt we can triple that number. It's going to be absolutely astounding. So UniTwin, it's going to go live in April. We're already doing the work, but it's already growing beyond our control. And I have some of our partners listed here, but it's only a fraction of them. I couldn't fit all of them on there. This is an absolute game changer in the way we do work. Absolutely, completely a game changer. It's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and it's going to be our legacy. And we also have a seat at the table for anybody here that wants to be part of it. It's going to be great. So that's our one thing. The last of our colleagues get on here. There we go. A whole bunch of them. Now, the second thing we're going to do is a big research project. And not just for the sake of research, but it's going to be a worldwide effort to identify the best practices for community and youth development. There's some amazing work going on there. And with this whole idea, what we're going to do, it's really going to transform and redefine what global comparative research is. There's like I said, there's amazing people worldwide doing all kinds of youth and community building work. We're going to do a long-term research project here that's going to pull all these together, identify all the best practices, and allow all locations to have access to this material. The other thing here, this is going to take place in urban areas and rural areas, and everywhere in between. I want to stress that. But we have a big focus on rural areas. And I'm sure you're asking why, when you think of a lot of the troubles in our cities and everything else. But part of this comes down to some very important numbers that I just want to quickly throw out there so you're aware of. If you talk to the demographers, if you talk to a lot of the other people here, there's what they call the Youth Bulge exists. And really what that is that there's a tremendous number of young people worldwide that exists along with a very heavy dependence on agriculture. And if you look at the UN numbers, nearly half of the world's population resides in rural areas. And over 90% of all rural residents live in the underdeveloped world. Almost a third of the world's population, a third, is under age 15. And half of the world's population is under age 25. So we've got this tremendous number of young people. And most of those young people live in the underdeveloped world, in rural areas. So this is where a lot of the work is going to be taking place. Now, this reality creates an environment where the active engagement of citizens, of youth, of communities is going to be transformational. And some other really cool things that come out of this, things that I find absolutely amazing, is that we do our work to build capacity, but also to develop partnerships. And this is going to be the cornerstone of what we do as well. We build north-south and south-south partnerships. For those of you not in this area, northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere. The thing we want to avoid is some northern countries who think they know it all coming in and dictating how development should take place in the global south. So the idea is here, we're building relationships between countries in the global south and offering help where it's needed. Already, as was mentioned on the panel discussion this morning, Kenya and Zambia have been linked together, and they're doing some absolutely amazing work together. They're working together like crazy, sharing resources, just doing phenomenal things. And through this UNESCO Chair program, we're going to link organizations together in 25 countries. This is just phenomenal. It's going to be a sharing of resources, best practices, expertise, all kinds of things. It's going to be a dynamic relationship that creates an enormous amount of South-South partnerships. And I really think of it as a community of nations. It's going to be focused on youth and community building. Now, one more thing. One more great project we have planned here that I'm really, really excited about. It's our whole global education programming agenda. And with this one, we completely revolutionize how we do global education. We're planning a global education program focusing on leadership and community building across the lifespan, everywhere from little tiny kids all the way up to the oldest of residents. And it's going to provide courses in everything from leadership skills to community building to how to make small businesses to how to develop positive youth development, fight conflicts, all sorts of other things. Now, Penn State is a leader in this area. Our world campus is absolutely phenomenal and have been doing some amazing things, as is the distance education program at National University of Galway. And recently, Penn State has dedicated a tremendous amount of resources to what they're calling Moocs. Have you heard about them? Every time I say it, I kind of giggle. It's a funny term, but what it stands for is Massive Open Online Communities, courses. And what this means in practice is just absolutely astounding. If a citizen of this planet has access to the internet, to an internet cafe, or even to a cell phone, they're going to be provided with college courses and instructional materials. Here's some ideas about it. Absolutely amazing. Anywhere, anytime, all kinds of things like this. We call this one iMonk. It's going to be coming to a temple near you someday. It's my other Apple placement. Now, the first thing you're asking, this is a pretty big thing. How much is it going to cost, right? Well, it's a great question. How does free sound? That's what it's going to be. We got it covered. All we ask is that you take this knowledge, these skills, and you apply them to make life better in the places you're in. As simple as that. The best courses in the world by the best faculty, free of charge. Distributed through Penn State and through the global UNESCO network. And if people need more than that basic knowledge base, we can do that too. We've got tremendous things lined up here. We have certificate programs that we can put in place that can be distributed out there. There's even degree programs for the undergraduate and graduate level. And those things do cost money. We've got foundations and international development groups and government agencies that are willing to step up and make those a reality. We've also made some deals with the European Union and NUI Galway and some other people where we think we can have all kinds of programming in place very soon. It's absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing. Now, I want you to think about the potentials of this for a second. The potentials of this for an educator in the underdeveloped world, for primary and secondary schools in all parts of the world. Think about the life-changing impacts for a young girl in Zambia, or for a farm worker in Cambodia, or for a child in Kenya. This is beyond belief. It's utterly amazing, and it's just absolutely astounding, and it changes everything. So those were three of the big things that I wanted to share with you that we have planned that are happening right now. There's a whole bunch of other amazing things that are working out, but these are some of the big ones. A lot more in the works. And these and other efforts that I've mentioned, these are going to help us realize our dreams of making the world a better place. And I want you to come and be part of it. Come pick some fights with us. Get in with this. We're going to have some great times. And I absolutely promise you we're going to do awesome and miraculous things. Now, a few last things I want to mention here. We're going to do all these things we mentioned and much, much more. But the key to this is you. Is really what it comes down to. We've asked you, all of you here today, because we know you'll be part of this fight for justice. We need you to help raise awareness. We need you to help us develop programs and research. You need us to help find funding to make sure these things are a reality. And if you think about it, there's no better place for this to begin than in Pennsylvania, for those of you that are from here. This is the birthplace of the Molly Maguires. It's the birthplace of the original unions. It's the birthplace of the Knights of Labor. It's where Milton Eisenhower dreamed about the potentials of UNESCO. And it's also where Ben Franklin found the Pennsylvania Abolition Society to end slavery, and where our founding fathers came up with more than an idea, but really, more than a nation, but an idea. This idea of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right in Philadelphia. And not just for us, but for our fellow citizens of the world. And all of these people, I honestly believe, have passed the torch to us today. So let's make them proud and continue their quest for social justice, for equality, and for creating a better world. Now is absolutely our moment. Make no mistakes about it. Of all the opportunities out there, none have greater potential for immediate and long-term impacts and action in education, the transformation of our communities, the empowerment of the disenfranchised, and the positive development of our youth? None. Absolutely none. Now, I know you hear inspirational speeches all the time. I'm not even sure if this was one of them, but you hear them all the time. You're always being asked to open up your hearts and then very quickly open up your wallets. This is different. This is different. We've never before seen the structures, the capacity, the partners, and the resources we have in place with this new UNESCO program. It's absolutely amazing. And I know you're all tired. I know you're all overworked and maybe a bit cynical of all of these things we're talking about. And I know there's going to be people outside this room that are going to tell you that the world is too big, it's too corrupt, that the victims deserve their low lots in life, and for many that maybe for the sake of our careers, we should look busy and do nothing. I'm asking you today to try one more time. Take one more leap of faith. I promise we won't let you down. And I promise we're going to be part of something absolutely extraordinary together. Nonetheless, as you question your ability to change the world, and I know we all think about that, I simply ask you to remember back to our younger days, whether it was last year or 60 years ago, when we were absolutely certain and positive that we could change the world. We were right, and you were right. You were right, and your dreams are still out there. Now, I want to share one last story. I recently read this wonderful essay by Joseph Lapland, and it was looking back on the 55th anniversary of Jack Kerouac's novel On the Road. Has anyone read it? Okay. The rest of you, I'll send you copies. Brilliant book. This was the novel that sent many young people, including myself, out on that road of discovery in search of limitless possibilities beyond our hometowns. A book that mandated the questioning of authority, the questioning of our social conventions, and absolutely challenging the moral blind spots of our age. For me, it was magical. And Lapland in this essay took aim at those of us who've grown up, who've become established, and who think we've grown wiser. And even more so, those of us who now dismiss Kerouac and this novel that inspired us as being idealistic and childish and ridiculous and naive in its call for social change. But the thing I love most about it is that Lapland had this wonderful reaction to these people. And here's what he said. He said, perhaps these people never took to or went back on the road due to fear or family, and therefore can no longer revisit Kerouac's work. Perhaps it's hard even to look at his writing because the readers are actually looking at themselves. And it's easier to say, well, Kerouac was naive, than to say I missed out on something. Maybe some readers have given up on that search for beauty and spirituality, or realize that they're not one of those people that burn, burn, burn like fabulous yellow Roman candles. And that knowledge is painful. I want to state it again. You were right when you thought you could change the world, and you still are. Your dreams of a fair and equal and just world are out there. And together, we can reclaim them and make them a reality. And this program is going to provide a lot of that opportunity. I say this not to preach to you or to guilt you into action. I just want to put it all in perspective as we begin this amazing journey. And if we live up to our ideals, which we claim we are going to do, in the not too distant future, you can put your children or your grandchildren on your knee, and you can tell them those once upon a time stories. You can tell them about once upon a time where education was only for the privileged few, where women were treated as second-class citizens, where injustice and equality were the standard, and when communities were trampled on by outside interests. And more importantly, you can tell them that you were there. You were there to fix it. That the great things we started talking about today is giving them a bigger and brighter future. And with such possibilities and potentials at hand, how can we ever explain our inaction to them? How can we ever stand by and tell them how we stood by and let appalling things continue? And as I close, I want to ask just a few final questions. I know you have lots of places to put your time and resource and efforts, and I know how busy you are. But really, if not for the thousands of communities we can help, then where? Places like these. And if not for the millions of youth, billions of youth that we can reach, then who? Where else can we put our efforts? Kids like these. And really, lastly, if now is not the time for bold and daring and nearly miraculous actions, then when? We need it now more than ever. And if you need any more proof of miracles, look no further than this stage. Here you have a former, or perhaps not so former punk from rural Pennsylvania, of Irish descent, standing before you accepting one of our greatest honors. It's absolutely humbling. And it's an honor that's eclipsed only by the responsibilities and opportunities it brings with it. But it's not intimidating at all, not one bit, not at all. Because I know we're all in this together. And for this, I'll be forever grateful for you sharing this wonderful day and being part of this amazing journey that's going to transform the world. Thank you very much.